The paper plates were still warm with barbecue grease when my father raised his glass and called me a disgrace in front of 40 people. My name is Meredith Frost. I was 34, and I was standing at the edge of my own family's Father's Day table. He lifted his sweet tea like a toast, said he was proud of all his children, then looked right at me, except the disgrace sitting at this table. Nobody argued. Nobody even looked up. So I didn't either. I smiled, set a plain manila envelope down beside his plate, wished him a happy Father's Day, and walked to my car. I'd reached the end of the gravel drive, engine idling, when the screen door banged and my father started to scream. The neighbors came out onto their porches. But to understand what was in that envelope, you have to go back 5 years, to the day my mother died. Welcome back to Family Justice Vault, where quiet people finally get the last word, and the truth always finds its way to the dinner table. That morning, I was in my office in Cedar Hollow, a CPA 12 years into a practice I'd built from nothing. Father's Day was circled on my calendar. 40 minutes to the homestead, 40 minutes back, a whole afternoon of being talked about instead of talked to. I went anyway, because the woman who raised me would have wanted me there, and because I had unfinished business with that house none of them knew about. The Frost place has been in the family 3 generations, 80 acres, a leaning barn, a farmhouse my father was born in. I parked at the far end of the lane, the way I always did, like some part of me was always ready to leave early. In my purse was a dented tin box I'd carried for 2 years. Today, for the first time, I'd brought it back to the place it came from. My brother Travis, 38, worked the gate like he owned it, shaking hands, pointing guests toward the coolers. His wife Sandra refilled tea and said, just loud enough, "We're so glad the people who actually show up came today." My father stood at the head of the table, tall and gray, and gave me a nod, so small it could have been a twitch. I carried a deviled egg plate over because that's what you do with your hands when nobody offers you a chair. And I watched, because that's my profession, finding where the numbers don't add up. Travis leaned down and said something low into my father's ear. My father listened, then nodded slow and serious, the way you nod at something you've already half decided. I didn't know yet what my brother was selling. I just knew my father was buying. You don't become the disgrace overnight. 5 years ago, my mother was dying in the front bedroom, and the farm was drowning, mortgage behind, equipment loans worse. Travis had a plan, pull equity from the homestead for a feedlot investment, a sure thing. I asked questions. I brought a folder, a simple projection of what it would cost if the deal failed. My father took it, looked at it for 1 second, and set it face down without reading a word. "We don't need your spreadsheets, Meredith. We need faith." That was the line that drew the fence between me and the rest of them. The feedlot deal failed, of course. The man Travis trusted took the money and vanished. My mother died that April, and the family needed someone to blame who wasn't grief and wasn't a con man nobody could find. So they blamed me. At the funeral, my Aunt Lorna told 3 different women I cared more about money than my own mother. Travis cried beautifully at the casket. I let them have the whole story, because correcting it at my mother's grave would have made me exactly the cold thing they already believed. Here's what none of them knew. My mother spent her last 6 weeks in hospice at home, a nurse 3 days a week, good pain medicine insurance fights you on. I paid for it quietly, every invoice, through a billing address that wasn't mine. I held her hand the night she died. She knew which of her children had counted and which one had shown up. 2 years ago, on an ordinary Tuesday, I drove out to check on my father after a hard winter. While coffee ran, I saw a stack of mail shoved under the Sunday paper, a bank's name in the corner, a line of red print. Second notice. I offered to look, no charge. He said the place was fine, that he and Travis had handled it. A man who's handled it doesn't hide the second notice under a newspaper. I went to see Walt Harrove, a real estate lawyer who'd known my grandfather. He told me the mortgage had gone past saving, the bank had charged it off, bundled it for sale, and the homestead was weeks from auction. My father had told no one. I asked Walt if a third party could buy the debt itself. He looked at me a long moment and said yes, quietly, legally, and the bank wouldn't care who wrote the check. It cost me almost everything. I borrowed against my office, drained my retirement, emptied my savings. Walt set up a trust to hold the note and the recorded lien on the property, with terms I dictated. The bank got its check and walked away. The auction that was weeks from destroying my family simply never happened. My father went on living there exactly as before, no rent, no notice, believing he'd handled it himself. I let him believe that, because being saved by the disgrace would have been worse to him than losing the land. I told no one. The reason was in that tin box. Back at the party, I slipped away to my mother's live oak and sat on the old iron bench. Inside the tin was a letter in her shaking handwriting, found in her bottom drawer after she died. I'd read it once and carried it for 2 years. By the time you read this I'll be gone, so I'll say it plain. I know about the farm. I've watched him hide the notices, lean on Travis. Your father is going to lose this place, and his pride won't let him take help from the one child strong enough to give it. That's you. You're the one who can carry a thing in the dark and not need a single soul to clap for it. Save it if you can. Do it quietly. Let him keep his pride, even when he doesn't deserve it, because the land isn't for him, it's for the ones who come after. He'll never thank you. Do it anyway. You're the strong one, Mare. That's why it has to be you. I folded the letter back into the tin. Across the yard, the man I'd done it for was about to call me a disgrace. I went back for pie and saw Travis pull our father aside by the propane tank, a folder open against the side of the house. Just here, Dad, and here where the tabs are. My father patted for reading glasses he didn't have. The wind lifted the folder's cover, and I saw the logo, not a bank, not Walt's firm, but a real estate outfit 2 counties over that does one kind of deal. They don't protect places, they move them. I called out, Dad, wait. Travis snapped the folder shut. Family business, Meredith, nothing that concerns you. My father told him they'd finish inside, and the moment was gone. At the drink table, I overheard Sandra glowing to Aunt Lorna. Once it's all signed over, Travis says we'll finally get what we're owed. Signed over, not inherited. Now. I slipped into the kitchen while the cake was being cut. The folder sat on the table by my father's keys. Inside was a listing agreement for the full 80 acres, asking price set low for a fast sale, and the seller's signature line read Travis Frost, by power of attorney. My brother had gotten our father to sign a power of attorney months ago, dressed up as paperwork that protects the place. Now he was using it to sell the farm out from under all of us. I photographed every page and put the folder back exactly as I'd found it. I called Walt from behind the barn. He confirmed it. If Travis had a valid power of attorney and found a buyer, my father could lose the farm in 60 days and might never even understand what he'd signed. But Travis didn't know one thing. The farm could never be sold free and clear because the lien on it, for its full value, belonged to my trust. He'd built a beautiful key and fitted it into a lock that opened nothing. The moment any buyer ran a title search, the whole scheme would collapse on its own. I could have let it die quietly. That was the safe path, the one I'd walked for 2 years. Instead, I found my father at the dessert table and asked, low and even, to read the papers before he signed anything else. For a second, something flickered in his face. Then Travis appeared at his elbow, and my father said, loud enough for the whole yard to hear, "You lost the right to worry about this family the day you let your mother die." Hal Pewitt looked at his shoes. Sandra smiled into her cup. I drove home and printed 3 documents, the recorded deed of trust, dated 2 years back, naming me trustee. The bank's payoff letter, proof I'd satisfied the debt the same spring my father told the neighbors he'd handled it himself. And the listing agreement, Travis's signature at the bottom, the lowball price in bold. No letter, no accusation, just paper, the only language this family had ever let me speak. I wrote one line on the envelope, "Happy Father's Day." I almost didn't go back. But I read my mother's letter one more time and understood that doing it anyway meant the whole truth, not just the quiet, easy part. It was nearly dusk when I walked back up through the cut hay. Travis called out for someone to say a few words for Dad. My father rose, glass in hand, named his blessings around the table, Travis first and longest proud of all his children. Then his eyes found me, except the disgrace sitting at this table. Nobody defended me, not one of them ever had. I didn't cry. I stepped up, set the envelope by his plate, and said quietly, "Happy Father's Day, Dad. Open it when you're ready." Then I turned and walked back to my car. Behind me, Travis told everyone to ignore it, that I was just being dramatic. But I heard the envelope tear open, heard the papers slide out, heard my father's breath catch on the first line. He read all 3 pages, and the color left his face one shade at a time. The disgrace had saved the farm. The son he'd just praised had been trying to sell it. He came up out of his chair so fast it tipped into the grass. "Travis, what is this? What did you do?" Travis stammered that I was twisting it. My father wasn't listening anymore. He was roaring, wordless, the sound of a proud man watching every story he'd told about himself come apart. I started the engine and called the only thing I had left to say through the open window. "I didn't come to take anything, Dad. I came to give it back. It was always going to be yours. I just made sure no one could take it from you, including him. I didn't stay to watch it burn." In the rearview, I saw Travis backing away with his hands up, Sandra stepping a full foot away from her husband, Aunt Lorna with nothing to say for once. I drove home with the radio off, and somewhere around the county line, my hands finally started shaking. I let them. I'd earned it. The listing vanished within the week. One call from Walt and a title search Travis couldn't survive. Without the farm to sell, his creditors had nothing to wait for. Sandra took the kids to her mother's and didn't come back. Walt and I finished what we'd started 2 years before, folding the homestead into a proper family trust my father signed willingly this time, eyes open. He gets to live there the rest of his days. But it can never be sold out from under the family again. The trustee is still me. He called 9 days later. No real apology. He doesn't have the equipment for that. But he said my name, Meredith, not the other word, and asked why I never told him. "You wouldn't have let me help if you'd known it was me," I said. He was quiet a long time because we both knew it was true. When he asked if I'd come out again sometime, I drew the line my mother never got to draw for herself. "I'll keep the roof over your head, Dad. For her, and for the land, and for the people who come after. But I won't keep standing in a room that calls me a disgrace." Those are 2 different things, and you don't get one without the other anymore. He didn't argue. For the first time in 5 years, he didn't argue. I've thought a lot since that night about what my mother asked of me, and the part of her letter I only understood too late. Being the strong one doesn't mean you owe people your silence forever. Sometimes the kindest thing and the strongest thing are the same thing, letting the truth finally sit down at the table and stay. If you've ever been called the disgrace by people who never once saw what you carried in the dark, tell me in the comments. You are not the cold one in your story. Subscribe to Family Justice Vault, where the quiet ones always get the last word. I'll see you at the next table.